Okay, well, lately I've been playing video games while I record these intros, so you can kind of, if you hear some Sega Genesis music, you can ignore it. Actually, this is Shining Force CD for the Sega CD. So anyway, yeah, episode 46 of the Clive Barker podcast. We had our guest, Paul Flewitt, and of course, Jose and I, and the topic is favorite Clive Barker memories. And I had a ton of favorite Clive Barker memories, and actually... one of the first dates, I guess, that I went on with my wife, who's my wife now, Jennifer, was a Clive Barker book signing for Sacrament, which was about 1995, and that's the year that we met. So yeah, Jennifer's even a guest for a short time here on this podcast to kind of talk about that. So it was a lot of fun. Episode 46, favorite Clive Barker memories.
Hey, Paul.
Hi, Jose. How are you?
Hey, everything's fine here. We're just adding you to the call, me and Ryan. So, how have you been?
Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Thank you for asking.
We're going to be joined by Ryan and Jennifer, Ryan's wife.
Yeah.
So.
How's it going?
Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Before we get started, what have you been up to since the last time we did this podcast?
Well, I bought some. I guess what I've been up to is I bought some Hellraiser comics from the '90s, the old stuff, because I didn't have them here with me in the United States, and I wanted to reread some of those. So I ended up I found them on eBay. They were really cheap, so I got a full run of them. There's just a couple of comics missing, and I started rereading the Weave World book because I know the episode is coming up. So that's pretty much what I've been doing, apart from, just being, doing stuff at home and feeding the cats, I guess.
Okay. Well, how about you, Paul? What have you been up to lately?
I just finished reading Barbie Wilde's book, The Venus Complex.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's intense, isn't it?
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really good. Other than that, just usual day-to-day stuff. Speaking quite a lot to Steve Dillon, actually, about Tribes of the Moon.
Oh, cool, because you guys are both in Australia, right?
No, I'm in the UK.
Oh, right. Okay, got it.
But as you know, they're doing the anthology for the Oz HorrorCon, which I submitted for, and apparently was successful. So I've been talking to Steve quite a lot about that. So that's where a lot of my efforts have been going for the past couple of weeks.
Excellent. We were just helping him out. At Occupy Midian. We were sending him some stuff that he needed to make his book. There's going to be a companion book for the event, and we were just sending him over some posters of previous screenings and stuff like information about Occupy Midian. So yeah, it's going to be cool.
It looks like it's going to be really good.
So Jennifer, what have you been up to lately?
Just trying to tolerate the heat since it's been in like the mid-80s with the forest fires nearby. So I've had to keep the windows and the doors closed so we're not getting all the smoke.
Yeah.
So it's been really hot and just trying to keep cool.
It's funny because I've been watching Life Below Zero on National Geographic, and it keeps talking about Barrow and places around that area, and it's always about the winter for them.
Yeah,
oh,
sure.
I know. Well, this is like pretty unusual to have this long of a heat wave. So
yeah.
it's like really hard to complain because the summer is so short here, so you really don't want to. But at the same time, this has lasted a really long time.
Yeah. I actually just had a TV show contact me, or a production company that wants to make a TV show about people who flip houses in Fairbanks, Alaska.
What is house flipping?
That's where you buy a house cheap and then you fix it up and sell it again.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, so there's a company in New York that wants to make a TV show about that. So I referred them to somebody. I don't know if anything's going to come of it, but
that'd be cool.
What's the other thing? Yesterday I was stuck behind a forest fire on the freeway. I'd been driving all day, and I had to sit on the freeway for 4 hours.
Jeez.
While they waited for the forest fire to jump the highway before they would let us go.
Good heavens!
And they sent a pilot car to let 50 cars go, and I was in one of those 50. And then they made everyone else turn around, which if you've been in that area before, turning around means driving another 200 miles until you can find a place to stay.
Man. Yeah, I caught you while you were driving there before you got to the fire, right, yesterday?
Yeah. Yep, so I got home at about midnight when I was expecting to get home at 8 or 8:30.
My goodness.
But, I mean, it's better than the people who'd had to turn around and go stay somewhere.
Yeah. That's got to be tough.
Yeah. So, I guess in Clive Barker news, the Hellbound Heart Abridged edition that we talked about before, the audio one that Clive reads himself, you can get on Audible now.
Yeah, I saw that. I have the original one. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. The way that Clive does the Cenobites is very, very interesting. He makes them sound pretty hollow and vacant. I didn't know it was abridged though. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I actually one time I went through and looked up the changes. They aren't really anything. It's hard to remember what they are, but they're small. I was gonna say I made an audiobook out of mine a long time ago. Like 10 years ago, I recorded it into my computer, and then there's some trick where you can change the file extensions and make it an audio book in iTunes. So
okay.
But it still sounds like a cassette. So I'm sure the Audible one sounds a lot better.
Well, let's hope so. I don't know if it's been remastered or anything, but it might be a good chance for people out there if you've never heard it. It's definitely worth a listen to. So. Hopefully a lot of people will buy this again. And
it's Clive Barker's voice from the 80s, which sounds totally different from his voice right now.
Yeah. There was one time I remember when Aberrat 2 came out, and there was a website. I think the website must have been the books of the Aberrat or the Islands of Aberrat.com. I don't remember because I don't think it exists anymore. I'm not sure. But there was an extract of the first chapter of the second book, I think. It was called Hunger. And we had, Clive Barker mention how Otto Houlihan was going to visit Christopher Carrion. And Clive sounded pretty rough in that recording. Luckily, it was just one chapter. But I wonder whatever happened to that. I mean, I wish I would have,
Yeah,
I think I saved that somewhere. I think I recorded it and saved it somewhere. But that was, strictly online content for the website. It was never like an audiobook or anything.
Huh. Well, that still would be really cool.
Yeah, if I find it in my hard drive, I'll send it over to you.
So then, our only other news, I guess, is Dragon Con. That the next screening that was just announced is, and we've sort of hinted at this in the past, but the next screening is going to be at Dragon Con in Atlanta, Georgia, August 30th through September 2nd.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And we also have one planned for Erie, Pennsylvania, right?
Yep, the Erie Horror Festival.
In October. And, personally, on a personal note, there is something which is just a rumor yet, so don't think that this is going to be a reality until it's confirmed. But there is someone interested in making a screening for San Francisco.
Right.
So let's see if the Bay Area can get the Cabal cut again, because that would be great, because I live in the Bay Area. I would really like to be able to go.
And Russell said he was interested.
Yeah, he said he was 100% behind it if they can find the funding for it. So
yeah, so there's a lot of things that have to go right for that to happen. I mean, Morgan Creek has to agree, and she has to convince the board of directors for this convention, right, that it'll be okay to do.
Right, because they need funding for that, because they always have to it costs money to organize these things, and especially to bring Russell from the UK to San Francisco.
and whatever guests that they're bringing over.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess then, is there any other news that you can think of?
Well, apart from the Audible thing, and that's pretty much it for this week, I guess.
Okay. Well, and our main topic is our favorite Clive Barker memories. So this was I kind of had this idea to do this episode because I was getting kind of feeling down doing all these Hellraiser sequels.
Yeah.
The more, every episode we were talking about, I was feeling a little more depressed. So I wanted to do something happier.
Yeah, especially because some of the things we were discussing on Hellraiser were vaguely, very remotely related to Clive Barker's work at all, because Hellraiser has diverged from Clive Barker a long time ago. So
yeah. So Paul, you had a favorite memory of Clive Barker's stuff, or a favorite Clive Barker memory?
Yeah, not a personal memory, but based around Clive Barker, I suppose. Several memories.
Mm-hmm.
But probably the biggest one is happening now. And that's... Clive just seems to be getting bigger and bigger all the time, and more well-known. I remember when I was sort of 13, 14, possibly. No one really knew who Clive was unless you mentioned Hellraiser. Now, all of a sudden, with the Cabal cut and with probably the internet, almost anybody knows Clive Barker, and the community's great. I absolutely love sort of you guys and what you do, and
thank you.
Just being able to speak to Clive Barker fans worldwide and getting their take on things is great. Unfortunately, Clive's not in the best health, as we know, but I hope he's enjoying it. He deserves it. For a while, I thought it was going to be one of those authors that wasn't going to be appreciated. But thankfully, he's getting his dues. And that's basically a building memory, I think, that's happening at the moment, which I'm quite excited by.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Absolutely. Yeah, I guess I can go next. I guess I have several favorite memories about being a Clive Barker fan, not so much about Clive Barker meeting him in person, because I've frankly never met him in person, which is, something I wish I hope to correct in the future, if given the chance. But I would say, I got, drawn into Clive Barker's work through Hellraiser, as I guess a lot of people have, because it's one of his most well-known movies. And I guess I got started by going to this import bookstore in Portugal, because that's where I'm from. And it was called the Britannic Bookstore. So they imported books from England and the UK. And at the time, they were pretty expensive because they were imports. So I would have to scrimp and save money from my allowance at the time. And it would always be a great event for me to get on the train to go to that city where the bookstore was. And invariably, when I was coming back in the train, the ride home would always be the first chapter of a book or several chapters, because it would take me like an hour each way on the train. So I have some really good memories of reading, opening the book on the train, and just the trip would just be like a blink of an eye, because I would read those books and I would get home, have dinner and just go to bed and read up through the night until it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and my eyes were burning, and I need to put the book down. So those were some of my favorite memories, of course. Other would be like going to the Fantastic Film Festival, Fantasporto, in Portugal, meeting Doug Bradley, always going to see like double features of Hellraiser, like Hellraiser 1 and 2, at like 1 in the morning in this old 100-year-old cinema in Oporto, with Doug Bradley introducing the film. Those kind of memories are some of my favorite, memories about being a Clive Barker fan. When I found out about the Cabal cut, I mean, gosh, I was, for 20 years, I was looking at the Fontana book, Nightbreed, The Making of the Film, and I was looking at the pictures inside the book, and I was like, well, these pictures are from scenes that are not a part of the film, and there are scenes that sometimes would be they would show us that there was a completely different storyline that got cut out of the film, and I was like, I wonder if someday we'll ever be able to see the film as it was supposed to be. And then, all of a sudden the incredible happened, and Clive Barker discovered that he had the footage in the offices of his Seraphim company, and, that finally got out there, and thanks to Russell Charrington, the restoration of the Cabal cut is being done as we speak. So that's another, building memory, like Paul Flewitt was mentioning, that it's exciting moments for everybody, and
it's crazy to be right in the middle of that. Would not have expected that. I mean, I just thought I'm gonna go to see, what they screened in Horror Hound, so that I can report about it for our podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and who knew that all of this would have happened, from the events at that Mad Monster Party. So, Paul, did you get a chance to see the Cabal cut?
I did. It was awesome. It was a lot different to the original. I was a bit skeptical going in because I just didn't know. I knew that there were missing scenes. I didn't know what Russell had been able to collect together, but I've got to say, it was amazing. I don't think I could watch the original anymore, or the butcher cut, as we call it.
Yeah. I think
that
I'll be able to watch it if it's in high definition.
I'd possibly be able to watch it back to back with the Cabal cut. I'd probably be able to watch it just to compare.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess a lot of people will be doing that whenever the Blu-ray DVD thing comes out. I guess a lot of people will be doing that. I'm sure some people will be doing their own fan cuts of the film, as usual. It's just inevitable that people will want to have, like, for example, the Cabal cut where Narcisse lives or something like that. So I'm sure people are going to mess around with it.
Mm-hmm. I'd just rather have the original vision. I'd just rather have what's in the book on the screen, and that'll make me happy.
Yeah, well, and another thing that Clive Barker, when he interprets or when he adapts his book into a movie, he doesn't always go beat for beat exactly the same. So if you look at Lord of Illusions, is totally different from The Last Illusion.
Lord of Illusions is kind of a mix between, in my opinion, and some things have been confirmed since that. It's kind of a mix between The Last Illusion from the Books of Blood and, to some extent, the Damnation game.
Yeah.
Because Nyx is a little... It's very, very close to Mamoulian in the Damnation game, in the sense that the relationship between Mamoulian and Joseph Whitehead, the millionaire, is very similar to the relationship between Nyx and Swan. Basically, they both know that they're not long for this earth. They want to get their disciple or their number one and go into the darkness with them to keep them company. So, that always struck me as. And for example, another thing that you were mentioning that gets changed in the translation to cinema was Hellraiser, of course, from the Hellbound Heart, because in the book we had Rory, in the movie we have Larry, and in the book we had Kirsty was a friend of Rory's. In the movie she's like his daughter. So Yeah, I guess it's inevitable. Some things are going to get a little changed.
And the
sometimes.
box and the Cenobites are different.
Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day. In the book, in the novella, the box is a simple black, 6 black lacquered faces. It's not the highly decorated little piece of gilded arabesques that we see in the film.
Yeah. Well, I guess my one of my favorite memories right now, I think, this is probably about the 9th time that I saw Clive Barker at a signing, and this was at Texas Frightmare Weekend, and I waited in line to see him, and I brought a huge amount of stuff to autograph. I mean, and just because, years go by between signings or whatever, and I had a lot of stuff, and they were charging like $25 per thing, so I was paying a lot of money. And he was also doing illustrations for everybody. And he saw me, and he kind of remembered me, and he's like, "Hey Ryan, I suppose you're wanting a drawing of a monster." And I thought about it for a little while, and I said, I would have said yes, but I have a baby that's on the way, and I think I'd like you to draw something aberration, something Aberrat related for him, that we can hang in his room. And so he drew sort of a portrait of the baby that we have hadn't been born yet.
Yeah, the boy with the wings.
Yeah, to the boy in the wings. And he didn't have a name yet either. I think, and at that time, he had to lean on Mark, and his head was kind of tilted, and I felt, really close and kind of afraid for him at the same time, and at that point, I sort of felt like I'd turned a corner, and that I didn't want to just be a fan anymore, that I wanted to try to help, and not, I guess, not push to say, like, when is the next thing going to come out, or, just only appreciate him for his output. I guess that's kind of hard to explain, but that was kind of the point where I decided that I wanted to do something. That was kind of the germ of where this podcast came from.
I suppose, in a way, Ryan, you had a bit of a personal connection, whereas we're all connected to his imagination in one way or another. You've sort of been able to build up, however tenuous, a small personal relationship there.
Yeah, I think so.
That's cool.
I also became friends with Mark Miller at that screening, and we started trading Imagica card game cards.
Right.
So I helped Mark get his last ones, so he finished his collection. I still need like 7 more cards, but I can't find anybody else to trade with.
Yeah, try eBay.
Gosh, yeah. I've had saved searches on there for about 5 years now.
I was in the Clive Barker's official fan club, which was called Lost Souls at the time. This was back in the 90s. I think it was run by this couple called Cheryl Benson and Steven Dressler. And it was pretty cool being in the fan club because we got these newsletters called Lost Souls where you could read like a little interview with Clive every once in a while, and they would talk about, upcoming plays that are being, done based on Clive Barker's plays. And at the end, there would be a section for pen pals. Yes, it was still the 90s, so people didn't have emails yet. It was mostly like pen pals. So that was cool. They used to send us goodies along with a newsletter. Like, I got some things which they're pretty much like rare stuff in my collection these days. Like these little, I got a big autographed picture by Clive Barker. I got like a Pio reproduction of a painting that Clive Barker did for the character in Imagica. It's bigger than a postcard. So
wow, that's cool.
I got one of the Imagica cards, which is Clive Barker. I guess it's probably rare. I'm not sure because I never got into the Imagica card game.
Yeah, that's one of the promo cards. So those are more rare than the other ones.
Okay. Well, it was cool because you felt like you were part of this group of people, around the world.
Yeah.
That, like Paul Flewitt said, they all share this bond of, the imagination of Clive Barker, and that's what drives us and gives us a certain connection to this fantastic world that exists in all of us. I got especially attached to Imagica, the book, because for me that's even more so than Aberrat. For me, Imagica is Clive Barker's magnum opus.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think where he was, he reached heights in that book that are just amazing. It's the book that made me laugh, made me cry. It's the book that sometimes I just grab it off the shelf and just open up in a random page and start reading, because I just love the prose in that book so much. It's just an amazing piece of literature for me, Imagica. It's a book that I've reread like several times, and I never get tired of it.
I think I've read it maybe 3 times.
Uh-huh.
But I'd like to more. It just is so huge.
I've read it a few times. I agree with what Jose's saying. It's a great work of fiction. I like it. I know people that take that almost as theology when they're talking about Imagica.
Well, and Clive certainly does. I mean, if you ever ask him at a screening, if anyone ever asks him about his religious beliefs, he says, "Have you ever read Imagica?" Because it's pretty much in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I guess in that book, and I don't want to do any spoilers on this book, but it's like it's a multi-layered theology that's present in there, because we have like not just one single God. We have several kinds of gods and several kind of ages of gods. Like in the beginning, like we find out that previous to Hepixamendios, there were the goddesses, and and then the age of Hepixamendios, the patriarchal god, came into being. And then finally, when he falls, then the goddesses come back, and it's just very rich mythology. There's some things in there that just speak deep into every one of us, I guess.
It's a mirror of the world and the way we'd like to see the world.
In itself, it's kind of a history of religion, of world religion, really, because that's pretty much what happened throughout history. The goddesses were pretty much taken out of history and replaced by male gods.
Yeah.
So it's basically an interesting commentary on the death of the female, the sacred feminine, I suppose.
Yeah, the paganism being replaced by a more homogenized, Catholic,
regimented, dogmatic.
Religion, and ultimately the return of paganism, which some people might argue that has been going on since the 60s to some extent. Mm-hmm. Also, I think it's really interesting that he makes the Fifth Dominion have gates open. It's never mentioned if it's just in England, but it makes it look like it's just in England that the gates would open for the Imagica. Yeah. So it's also kind of like a little love letter to England, I guess, because he puts it right in the center of the connection to the rest of the Imagica circle.
It's kind of interesting that you read it that way, because I kind of read it that there were sort of gateways in all sorts of different places. It were kind of random where it showed up. Is the way I kind of read it.
Okay.
Well, now I want to read it again.
Yeah, me too.
Because, hey, everybody, wait! I'm gonna go get it. No. So Jennifer, did you have any stories or anything that you'd want to add?
Well, obviously my stories connect in with you, since you're the one that introduced me to Clive Barker and his books and movies and things in the first place. So, really, some of the things that really stick out in my mind. first is waiting in a really long line in Seattle with just these loads, like duffel bags of books, and just bathing pretty much in the excitement that Ryan had to actually be there in line and waiting to see Clive Barker, and he was so excited to have me be there because there was a limit, I think, on how many books you could bring. And it's kind of like, well, we'll just bring all this stuff, and we'll be 2 people, and we'll get up there, and, hopefully it'll be okay, and he will just agree to sign the rest of this stuff. And if he doesn't, well, I don't know. We'll figure it out. And so, it's just like seeing him be so excited about, everything that's coming up to, I think it was for the Sacrament book.
Yeah, Sacrament.
Was that first time that I really, got to see just how exciting and fun and everything it was to really just, see Ryan be so happy. And then when he got up there, he was full of questions and, knew just everything that was going on or what might happen in the future. And Clive Barker then, he was definitely in good health and pretty energetic and was good to talk to, even though of course there was a gazillion people in line. But that was my kind of way of getting into okay, this is big stuff. There's a lot happening here, and of course over the years I've read the majority,
all of them,
all of the books, the books of blood through the Abarat.
Just not like the plays
not the side, but just the main books. And I've always been really, really impressed with. I mean, he would cause me nightmares after seeing a movie or something of his. I mean, his detail and his ability to write. To just kind of carry you through in your own imagination, you can just kind of you really get a full picture of what's going on, and all the characters have such development and flow that it's just like, yeah, you're right there along with him. And whether I liked it or not, that would go with me into my own dreams and things, and of course it'd scare the crap out of me, and then be like, whoa, do I really want to be doing this? He's powerful. But I kept going with the rest of the books, and the other one that kind of sticks out for me is when Ryan and I weren't together, and I think it was was it The Lord of Illusions, where I think you and I both ended up watching the movie by ourselves separately?
Yeah, I was living in Alaska, going to college, and Jennifer was going to college in Washington, so we both went to see it in the theater separately.
So we both saw it at this, basically around the same time, and kind of the same idea. It was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to a movie. I'm going by myself, and it's a horror movie. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? But we did it, and then talked about it afterwards and stuff. And it's again, this really, really powerful. He's a great writer. At this point, though, I mean, I've gotten to a point where in my life that I think if I do start really delving into his stuff again, it would just totally horrify me. So sometimes I have to distance myself, but I still get really excited for Ryan and everything that's going on with Clive Barker.
I told Jennifer she probably would be better to not watch The Midnight Meat Train.
I did not watch that, no.
Oh, especially the especially the unrated version where instead of one eye, that pops 2 eyes out of the guy, the brother from
Yeah,
what's the name of the brother from Sam Raimi? I forgot his name.
Ted
Raimi?
Raimi, I think.
Ted Raimi, yeah.
He gets hit in the head with a hammer.
Yeah, and in the rated version, 1 eye pops out, and the unrated, 2 eyes pop out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You might not want to watch
don't
that.
matter quite as much. It's that overall experience that'll hit at me pretty. That's what hits at me.
That movie left me feeling kind of raw and traumatized for a little while after I saw it.
Man, I just love Vinnie Jones. I think he made an extremely wonderful Mahogany.
Yeah.
Although I will say that in my mind, Mahogany was a completely different person.
But I think that's okay. I mean, the movie can exist separately from the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always figured Mahogany to be more of big, lumpy, expressionless guy, like kind of fat, but not fat.
Yeah.
You know?
He was an accountant.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe that's how I just envisioned him. Kind of like the Kingpin in the Daredevil comics.
Right. Did you never watch him play football, Jose?
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. I love football.
You pretty much just described him as a footballer. Lumping and angry.
Yeah. That's, you know. I mean, I remember Vinnie Jones when he was a footballer and his infamous grab and twist tactic that he did once.
We're sort of at a disadvantage being from the United States.
Oh, basically, he just one time in a game, he just grabbed some players' testicles and twisted it while they were running along. So that became, yeah.
You can see that on YouTube, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll pass.
He was pretty hardcore,
I guess. Jeez.
Yeah. But so Jennifer, have you ever read the book the what's it called, The Fantastic Traveling Circus of Maximilian Bacchus?
I gotta say no.
All right, that's one book that you got to give her, Ryan, because that one's pretty beautiful. I think it's not intimidating at all. It's very entertaining.
He wrote that one in the late '60s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was published for the first time just like 4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Bad Moon Books.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's got a talking crocodile and a clown and a traveling circus.
Something for my son.
Yeah. God, he's terrified of clowns. We just discovered.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Something. Where did we see a clown?
On Sesame Street.
Oh yeah, there was a clown on Sesame Street, and it was like old '70s Sesame Street, and Joey saw it and got really scared and jumped up and tried to run away, and he was totally freaked out.
Oh boy.
So
never show him Clowns from Outer Space then.
I haven't seen that.
Oh my God, it's a classic. You got to watch.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yeah, Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, what apart from the Magica, what is your other book that you like the best, I guess?
For me, it's got to be the books of the art. I think those are the other standout ones for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I find it hard to criticise any of them because there's something in all of his books that you can hook. But I think those are the real standout ones. Those are the biggest mythologies, I think.
I kind of find myself loving them all, but I think maybe if I was going to pick my least favorite, it might be Cold Heart Canyon.
Oh, how can you say that? I keep coming back to that.
Oh, really?
I don't know why. That's something that I just keep coming back and back and back to, and it's one that I recommend to lots of friends that suddenly picked up 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh my God! I love the beginning of the book. I love the beginning with the tiles, the old tiles that were made with the hunting scene in it, and the whole depiction of the monks in the monastery with the tiles. And I think that opening of the book is amazing. So I understand why people like it so much.
I think it's the characters in it that I don't like.
I think it's an interesting way to twist the conceit that he found in Weave World of having a world in a carpet. So he had a world in a wall as well, which is, it's an interesting twist.
Yeah, that's a good connection.
Good point.
Thought of it that way.
I guess I would say for me, it would probably be Weave World because, again, I started reading that book in the train after I bought it. And I was like just completely blown away with the whole thing. I even got a map of Liverpool, just so I could try to figure out what was going on in the story. And I really think that the visuals, the descriptions of the places and everything, they're just so well made. I mean, I'm completely transported whenever I read Weave World, and Just the scene where Cal Mooney falls. He's trying to climb the house of the old lady who died, while the moving men are bringing the carpet out through the back door.
And he this is like the first chapter or the second chapter, somewhere like around there, right?
Yeah, I think. And then he's trying to catch his prize pigeon, who's standing on the ledge of on the windowsill. And then all of a sudden he loses footing. He falls back, and while he's falling, it's like time stands still, and he sees the carpet unfolded beneath him, and it's like he's floating like in free fall over like this huge landscape. And I think that's the best memory that the immediate memory that I get from reading that book is that scene. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
That was sort of Clive Barker's Peter Pan, I think, when he wrote it.
Yeah.
I think anybody who comes from the UK can really relate to that, because there are a lot of locations that are very familiar to people who come from the north of England. It's a very north of England book. In the beginning is Weave World, and then it flies off to somewhere else. But I can go to places in my city that look like they could be that house in Weave World.
Yeah.
That's a really cool book for me to read personally.
Well, and I think you could say Cold Heart Canyon is a Hollywood book, for sure. I mean, probably in that same vein.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of sections in there that you can tell it's Clive speaking from experience. Like, for example, I think this has been confirmed in an interview or a question on Twitter or something. The whole chapter, because there's this whole chapter that for me stands out a lot as very realistic. It's when the main character's dog gets sick, and then he takes him to the vet, and it dies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I understood, that was pretty much from life. Clive had that happen to one of his dogs, and his dog died, and that's pretty much how it happened. So he put that in the book.
Yeah. If that's the only thing you can think about at the time, then it's going to find its way, probably.
Yeah.
That signing that Jennifer was talking about for Sacrament, that was the first time I ever asked Clive Barker about the director's cut of Nightbreed. So this was back in 1995, and I hung back and waited until everybody else was done in the line, and then I came back to him and I said, "So when is the director's cut Laserdisc of Nightbreed going to come out?" and he said, "Very soon. And it's going to have 25 minutes more of footage."
Right.
And, that was like the most exciting news for me ever.
And then it's like 15 years later.
Yeah, I know.
It's like that SpongeBob cutaway, like 16 years later, finally this is coming out.
But now we get to be a part of it.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. And it's even going to make it to the South Hemisphere with Oz Horror Con. That's great.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
I think maybe my favorite book is The Great and Secret Show. It's so hard to pick, but it's sort of a bridge in between the horror of his older style and the fantasy of the newer, I guess.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. I would also say Sacrament makes me feel that way. It's kind of a bridge between horror and fantastique.
Yeah.
I could never get along with Sacrament. That's probably one of my least favourite Clive Barker books.
The ending, some things in the ending kind of like, I was hoping for a little more, and so I can understand. But I think some things in there are pretty interesting, like the concept of like Jacob Steep, a character who would be a specialist in extinguishing species, like killing the last remnants of a species. Yeah, it's kind of like creepy when you think about it.
That's really depressing, but yeah.
Yeah, it's more of an environmental book. There's a big environmental message in that whole book with photographer.
And it's about gender and what it means to be male or female and the roles of if you're 100% male, then you're a bad person, and if you're 100% female, you're a bad person, right? Because Jacob Steep, and what was the female?
Rosa.
Rosa, yeah. They were both terrible, right? She would have babies all the time and kill them and smother them or something.
Mm.
And he was trying to kill all the animals.
Yeah, and then they were more intimately connected than they realized at the end, because I'm not going to spoil it, but they were pretty much two faces of the same coin.
Yeah.
That is also groundbreaking in some ways, because Sacrament, and I think I'm pretty sure about this, if you disregard the Books of Blood, it's pretty much the first story of Clive Barker as a novel where the main character is gay.
Yeah. And that was the exact time that he came. I mean, people knew, but that was the time that he came out. And actually, that book signing that I went to with Jennifer was at a gay bookstore in Seattle.
Yeah. Ah, okay.
So technically, is Piopa not gay?
What's that?
Technically, is Piopa not gay?
He's not male or female.
It's an interesting thing. The Mistiff would be whatever you wanted him to be.
Yeah.
And then Gentle's dilemma is, but I want to see you as you are. But that's the trick, because every time he would be close to him, he would lock him down into some image of either female or male or whatever he was craving at the time.
Yeah.
But then it does seem like near the end of the book he does get to begin to see the Mistiff as his true nature. So,
yeah.
But that is a good question. That is a good question, because sometimes in the book Imagica, some people are talking to Gentle and they're saying, "Oh, you got a really nice looking companion there," and you can tell that sometimes they're seeing something completely different than other people see. So
it's a cool
weird.
construct. I think that's one of those constructs that only Clive could have come up with.
Sure, yeah. It's a very revolutionary concept to imagine that creature could be pansexual, whatever you wanted it to be.
It's a very sensual, sexual thing that I don't think anybody ever really thought about before.
Yeah.
There was a moment in the book where Gentle is paralyzed in this island that was kind of a prison, and it was surrounded by this lake made of living fish. And one of the fish got into his mouth and kind of paralyzed him. So while they're staying there and they're waiting for him to recover, he leaves his body and he flies in the astral plane. I don't know if you guys are recalling this, but he finds out that the reason why they're being so well taken care of in that island is because Piopa was giving sexual favors to the guy who runs that place, that prison or whatever. And I think that's the scene in the book where he does see Piopa as his real appearance. And he describes the sex as kind of like a butterfly thing, like that one moment it could open up and be entered, and at the other moment it would just close and become, something that could enter something else. So, kind of a butterfly thing, like flapping its wings. It's just a strange construct, but very original, I guess.
Yeah.
But while you guys are working on that, I think this will be my time to depart.
Okay, Jennifer, thanks.
Things for tonight. But it was nice chatting with you guys.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Hey, all my best.
Bye.
You bet. Bye-bye.
By the way, who's got a cat? Because I heard a cat meow a while ago.
That's probably our cat.
Oh, we have two cats.
Yeah.
And a dog.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh yeah, there was going to be that BBC. There was going to be that BBC broadcast of a play by Clive Barker. It's going to be tonight or something.
Yes, tonight 9 p.m. my time.
Oh right. Okay.
I will be listening to that because it sounds really, really good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an adaptation. Let me get the BBC website up and I'll tell you more about it. Because it's an adaptation from one of the books. I just can't remember which book it is at the moment.
It's the story The Forbidden from the Books of Blood, which is the story.
Candyman.
The story
Candyman,
of Candyman.
yeah. Yeah, we need to mention that as well for the news. We need to mention that. That's a good thing. For me, it's going to be 1 a.m. I'm still going to be up, though. I'm going to see if I can listen to that, possibly record it.
It'll be a different way of experiencing it. I've never had a Clive Barker book read to me before.
Okay,
you should totally listen to, and this is another thing that should be put back in print because it's awesome. It's from the Seeing Ear Theater, which was a company that adapted stories to audio drama, and they adapted the story. It's one of Clive Barker's plays. It's the one where the devil is put on trial. The History of the Devil.
Yeah,
that is amazing, and I think I can probably find that online on like a web archive or something. I think there might be a website that has that still available to listen to. So if I find that, I'll send you guys a link.
Well, I'm going to play, let's see if you guys can hear this, but I want to play Steve Dillon's memory, his Clive Barker memory, or favorite Clive Barker memory, I guess you'd say.
Hi, this is Steve Dillon from Oz Horrorcon here in Australia, and I'd just like to tell you about how I came to meet Clive Barker in 1987. So at the time, I was still a relatively young man, aged 26, completely daunted by the thought of meeting Clive. And how that happened was I was publishing a games magazine called Adventurer in the 1980s, and I was kindly invited by HarperCollins, who were the publishers of Clive Barker's Weaveworld in the UK. So they were doing a launch both in London and in the north of England, and it turned out to be in Liverpool, which is Clive's hometown, and of course my own hometown as well. So I was terrified to meet this idol, this man who'd written Books of Blood, who'd just produced and directed Hellraiser, and now Weaveworld was coming out. So I was invited to the launch party at the Albert Dock in Liverpool. All I had was a cheap micro recorder, and afterwards I lost both that recorder and also the tape. Luckily, I managed to transcribe the interview, typed it up on my Apple Macintosh, and sent a copy to Clive. Shortly afterwards, the magazine folded and the business folded, and I never actually got to publish my interview. Luckily for me, though, Clive obviously received a copy and sent me a thank you letter back, and that's all I heard for a while. And then a few years later, I noticed it had been published, or extracts had been published in Stephen Jones' publication Shadows in Eden. If you can manage to get a copy of that book, it is an awesome book full of interviews and snippets of information about Clive and especially the early years. So sadly, all I have are a copy of the extracts from Shadows in Eden. So we have Clive's responses to my questions, but we don't actually have my questions, which is probably for the better to have Clive's words than mine, I guess. And that and some amazing memories that are still vivid in my mind. I can still see Clive sitting there, smoking a huge cigar. He kindly bought me one as well, which nearly killed me. I think I was smoking it for 3 or 4 days afterwards. And so some other memories I've got from that time was meeting Ramsey Campbell in the reception area at the launch was also amazing, and I still got a copy of the business card that Ramsey Campbell gave me, orange holographic figures on it. But of course my main memories are sitting there with Clive, asking him questions and sitting there with my jaw wide open, listening to his responses, and being struck by what an intelligent, insightful, and sensitive and thoughtful person he was, and also how generous he was being by giving me his time and doing that interview for me or with me. One of the other things is that having listened to Clive talking, in person directly about his work, about Weaveworld, about the imagery and the symbolism in his work, has always stayed with me, and I feel has always helped me understand his work better than I would have done. So whenever I read Clive's work, I've got those words of his coming back at me So when he says things like, we live in a society in which meaning is being drained away, he's speaking there as an artist, as a symbolist, as somebody that sees beyond the norm, that sees beyond the superficiality of everyday life. And you can't help but carry that with you through life. And I actually believe that's also affected my philosophy and my outlook on life as well. So yeah, I'd love to meet Clive again now, 25 years later, and have a similar kind of conversation with him, or just to sit and listen to him, and perhaps ask some pointed questions about his belief system now and how he's changed, or whether things have changed that much in his outlook and his beliefs over the years. He's still obviously very, very creative, and he's still very hardworking and putting it out there. So for now, I'd just like to say to Clive, thanks for what you gave me 25 years ago, and for me to be able to carry that through my life for the last 25 years, and hopefully for the next whatever it is it takes. So thanks, Clive.
Cool. So were you guys able to hear that okay?
Oh, yeah. That was a very beautiful testimonial from Steve Dillon. Yes, he mentions Shadows in Eden. That's another one of my memories. When I got Shadows in Eden for the first time, it's quite an intimidating book. At the same time, it's a real treasure trove if you're a Clive Barker fan.
Yeah.
Just when you open up that book, and you start, it's a big, oversized book. It's a hardcover. And when you start reading it, you go like, it really gives you an idea of the man behind the books, and I really enjoy that. In the same manner, I also really love to have the painter, what's it called?
The
I keep
Creature
forgetting.
and the Father of Lies.
Yeah, and the Father of Lies from the Phil and Sarah Stokes from Revelations. They published the nonfiction volume where you have like all those Clive Barker forewords, epilogues, introductions, and a lot of cool stuff in there as well.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of that one right now. I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, okay. The thing I liked the best about Shadows in Eden was the fact that it had so much art there, so many doodles from Clive, and drawings of monsters, drawings of character concepts. That's really, really interesting for me.
We've got some that people wrote in as comments.
I just have one more thing to say as a testimonial from. I know I never met him in person, but I've interacted with Clive over the years, not just through his personal official website, clivebarker.info, but also through Twitter. So some of my favorite moments of interacting with Clive were when I actually contacted him through Twitter, and he replied back. So those were always very exciting moments for me, especially when he was mentioning one day that he was writing a story for the Tales of a Journeyman, Black as the Devil's Rainbow, which is the collection of short stories that someday will come out, which has been in progress for like over 20 years. Not 20 years, but, the best part of 12 years. And he was mentioning on Twitter he was writing about a story that I think would be called Golgotha. It's going to be about Jesus Christ and the crucifixion, and there's a dog present at the crucifixion or something. So he was talking about that. And this was around the time where the Passion of the Christ film came out. And he was talking about that film on Twitter, and I tweeted back to him saying that, well, that book is based on the visions of a French nun from like the 18th century. And he was like, oh, really? Well, can you send me like more information about that? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I sent him a link to that stuff, the visions of this sister, which was a French nun, and he was very happy about it. He was like, "Oh, great! That's research material for Golgotha." And I was like, "Oh, cool! Anything that can help." And another one was when he was sick and he was in a coma, and he almost passed away, as we know. And then I sent a bunch of tweets, which I don't know exactly how to link to those tweets, but I sent him a few tweets, like saying how much a fan I was, how much I wanted him to be healthy, and how much his work meant to me. And he sent me back a message saying, "My friend, I just want to thank you for the love and empathy you send me. It helps me to stay strong. My love to you always, Clive." So that was also pretty heartwarming.
That's pretty cool.
That's very heartwarming. I actually I need to find that reply on Twitter, because I don't really use Twitter much. But that's one of the things that, these small interactions with fans are what makes Clive such a great person, such a good artist, because he really cares about his, getting back to his fans.
See, Jose, that's something that really strikes home when I think about sort of an outsider to listen to how we speak about Clive and to just stumble on a page and see the way that people talk about him. They probably wouldn't understand it unless they dug a little deeper and saw just how he reaches out. I can't think of another writer or another personality that really does that for their fans.
Yeah. That's a good point. Me neither. Maybe George R.R. Martin. I don't know. He's also pretty hands-on with his fans, but mostly just to tell them to leave him alone while he's writing the next book.
Yeah. Well, he also doesn't really have a filter. I mean, as far as like what he says. So it's funny. It's like I've been to see him like 10 times, and he always says something that gets me like flustered or embarrassed or like there was this last time I was wearing I have an Abarat T-shirt with the Dragon Man from Abarat 2 because that was for sale on the Zazzle store for a little while. So anyway, I wore that, and Clive saw it, and he said, "How many times have you washed that?" I was like, "I don't know, a lot." And he said, "Look how faded that is. Seriously, how many times has that gone through the wash?" I said, "Well, I guess a lot. I don't know." And he just went on and just kept on teasing me and giving me a hard time.
Yeah. Or that time when he drew something a little naughty on your book.
Yeah, on my on my Illustrator 2 book, he drew this guy that had a penis for a head. And while he was drawing, he's like, "Okay," and then there's a little hand reaching out to catch the semen that's coming out of the tip of the... And he's like, "So, Ryan, this is making you really uncomfortable, isn't it?" And he goes, "Ryan, you're probably the straightest person in this room." And he looked at Mark Miller, and he goes, "Or maybe you." He goes, "Nah, it's Ryan."
Oh, boy.
Because, I don't know, because, I had him draw a picture of the baby, so,
these things have to balance out,
Yeah. I mean, I've always been sort of a little bit shy, I guess, with that sort of thing, but...
Yeah. So you're going to get into the feedback.
Yes. So actually, the first one here is actually from a friend of mine who I had dragged to the signing for The Thief of Always. Robert Shaffer. He says, "I think it was when I went to see him for The Thief of Always book signing in Seattle, and he referred to Macaulay Culkin as irritating little fuck, or something to that effect." And what he said was... we were talking about, current movies and stuff, and he said, Macaulay Culkin, that smug little fuck, maybe Pelican could bite his head off.
Priceless.
Yeah, because I think Home Alone, just the first one, had just come out, and this was like in 91, was The Thief of Always.
Home Alone in Midian.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have like the Sons of the Free try to catch Macaulay Culkin, and he'd be like creating traps inside a Midian.
Oh God! So, and actually, he read the first chapter of that. That might have been the first time that I was, one of the times I got really, really hooked. He read the first chapter of The Thief of Always. Harvey Half Devoured by the Great Gray Beast of February. And I was like, oh my God! And just hearing him read that, and whenever I was an English major in college, and so whenever I had to do a dramatic reading of something, I would try to do what Clive did by reading the first chapter of either The Thief of Always or the first chapter of Weave World. Nothing Ever Begins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love both of those, and especially when you read them out loud. A lot of times when I pick up those books to read them again. I'll read that first chapter out loud.
There was a teacher in Alaska
Yeah.
who appeared in the companion book for Aberrat, right? She teaches her class about the Aberrat books, I think.
Yeah, and Clive gave her an advanced copy of Aberrat 3.
Oh, wow.
Before anybody else.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, she built a whole curriculum around Aberrat.
It has to be said, Clive could be responsible for the next generation of great readers. I just a few months ago gave Thief of Always to my 9-year-old daughter.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
She's done nothing but talk about Clive Barker since, to the point that she's been up on my bookshelf, and I found her the other day trying to read Hellbound Heart. I stopped immediately. But
it's like, you're not old enough quite yet.
That's risky. That's risky, yeah. Well, luckily, the official website has two different sections. One is called The Beautiful Moment, which is more for kids, while the other one is the normal Revelations website.
Yeah.
So, hopefully... It's kind of strange. I always thought it was kind of strange. I understand the dichotomy that he wants to be able to write for kids just as much as he writes for adults. It just causes those moments where the kids might want to grab something just because Clive Barker is on the cover, and then it turns out it's Hellbound Heart.
Yeah, I mean he's got a clear demographic. Like, this is meant for 16-year-old plus. And this is for younger kids, like The Thief of Always or Aberrat. I actually bought all the Aberrat books and The Thief of Always for Joey, but he's not even 2 years old, so they're sitting away up on the high shelf in his room.
It's something that Roald Dahl used to do. Is write for adults and for children as well, although he's better known in the inverse. I don't know if you did you get Tales of the Unexpected in the US?
I don't know. I haven't read all of his books. I've just read some of his kids' books.
Well, back in the 70s and 80s, there was a strand of TV shows called Tales of the Unexpected, which were all Roald Dahl horror come sort of mystery kind of stories. All based around the supernatural.
I think I've seen some episodes of that. I think I've seen some episodes of that in Portugal. Yeah. I don't think I've read the books, though, the stories, though. I've seen some episodes of that.
There are a bunch of short stories that you can get by Roald Dahl that are more adult themed, which are really interesting to read if you can track them down.
All right, well, there's a suggestion.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I'll have to do that. So another one we've got from is Gos Negre. I don't know how to say his name. But he says, I remember when I was 13 years old, here was a war, aggression, and I was running away from the harsh reality into the books and stories by Clive Barker. Books of Blood, Weave World, etc. I was amazed and fell in love with his work.
I think I know who that person is. I think he's from Bosnia or Sarajevo or someplace like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's an escape sometimes. Reading fantastic tales, it can be an escape. It can be entertainment. It
was an escape for me when I was in high school. I went and I had just moved to a new high school and I didn't know anybody. So at lunch, instead of trying to find someone to sit with, I would bring a Clive Barker book with me, and go in the library and read there or outside somewhere sitting by myself.
Yeah, for me, it was always more like I was always a voracious reader. So the thing is, when I pick up a book, I really can't stop until I'm done. And sometimes you get really uncomfortable. It can be really painful because I guess when I was reading in Magica, I was going through like 250 pages a day.
Wow.
So yeah, I would wake up.
You could have read that in like 5 days, maybe then.
More like a week to 10 days, I guess, because, you can only keep that pace for so long.
Yeah.
It would be really painful at one point. You're just reading it, and your shoulders start hurting, your arms start hurting, your eyes start burning, but you're like, just one more page, just one more chapter, and then it's like, oh no, now doubt has been eviscerated on the table of the tabula rasa. I need to keep reading this. What's going to happen? And it was really painful.
Spoilers.
Oh yeah, right. Well,
No, I'm just
sorry
kidding.
about that.
No.
It's such a big book that really you can mention a lot of things that happens in there. It's not going to spoil that much.
Nobody's going to even remember that by the time they get to that part, if they start reading right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So I remember it was like The Great and Secret Show was the second book that I read. The first one being Cabal that I read in Canada when I was there on a vacation in the summer of '93. And I read Cabal. That was the first book I ever purchased from Clive Barker. And then I moved on to The Great and Secret Show, which is pretty awesome as second books go. And then I think I got into the Books of Blood, and then I got into Weave World and Damnation Game, and so forth.
Cabal, and then I decided I wanted to read everything of his in order. So then I went to the Books of Blood, and then the Hellbound Heart, and then Cabal again, and Weave World, and The Great and Secret Show. And then Imagica was my first ever book signing of his. So I actually bought Imagica when it was new.
Yeah.
And I think at that time, I didn't have very many books to sign, for him to sign. Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, a lot of people love fantasy because it's an escape from daily dreariness, I guess. So I can totally see why Gos Negre would, especially if he was in a theater of war in Europe.
Yeah, holy cow.
That would really help him to face that terrible reality.
I'm still sort of blown away that Steve Dillon had an article that got excerpts put into the Shadows in Eden book. I had no idea. I have to go back and find those now.
Yeah, we need to ask him what's the name of the page.
Yeah.
What's the name of the article?
Yeah, that's really cool. So Dean M. Drinkel says, my favorite memory, speaking to Clive about his play Frankenstein in Love, which I was about to direct in London. So that's pretty cool. He directed Frankenstein in Love. And
that's great.
The whole purpose of his books, his plays being published in incarnations and forms of heaven was so that theater companies, could start performing them again. So that it would be other people besides just Clive Barker in the 70s.
And he would allow them, if they were small companies, he wouldn't even ask for any fees. He would just like them to be able to do those plays for free. You know, I mean, without having to pay him any rights or anything. I think he mentions that in the forwards to the plays in the Shadows, Incarnations and Forms of Heaven. So yeah,
and
I'm curious about that because Frankenstein in Love is also a very, very gory play. I mean, if you read that play, it takes place in this kind of lab, which is full of like body parts, and there's a revolution going on. There's all sorts of people getting killed. So yeah,
kind of reminds me of Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
So then Linda Kay says, when I picked up Books of Blood, knew nothing about him at the time, but have been a huge fan ever since. Yeah, I mean, wow, the Books of Blood, when you're reading them for the first time, it's kind of a punch to the gut. You know, those stories are so powerful, many of them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you read The Forbidden, which is going to be in a BBC audio drama tonight, I mean, it's very, it's interesting because of course I didn't, Candyman doesn't really get described that much in the story. So I guess we all have this idea in our minds unless we've seen the movie first.
Yeah.
And, when the researcher, she's going through the rooms in the projects, and she finds a hole in the wall, and she comes out of the hole in the wall and looks back, and there's like someone drew a screaming face around the hole with like the head thrown back and multicolored hair. Such a visual thing. I completely saw that in my mind while I was reading it.
I've seen that piece of graffiti in my hometown.
Oh, really?
Someone drew it. Yeah, someone drew it or spray painted it on a wall somewhere. I'd love to find out who did it, but they did it around a doorway, and it looked so cool.
Oh, man.
Or did it look really similar to what was in Candyman?
Oh, pretty much exactly the same.
Wow.
I mean, I think someone had either seen the film or read the book and said, that looks really, really good, so I'm going to go do it. And they went and did it. And it was there for years and years. Usually they'll wash off graffiti and things like that. Mm-hmm. But with this, it was there for years before they moved it. But it looked awesome.
That's so cool. Yeah, definitely a Clive Barker fan must have done that, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Michelle Saylor Angerstien. Michelle Saylor I'm so sorry, Michelle. Says, the first Clive book I ever read was The Great and Secret Show. Best memory, when Fletcher and the Jaff unleashed the Nuncio. No going back. I've been a fan ever since. Yeah, The Great and Secret Show was great. And secret. That was terrific. I loved that book. I really liked the Jaff, and when he went from Randolph Jaffe, the guy that, the postal worker in the crossroads of the world, they're the crossroads of America in Omaha, Nebraska.
Dead letter office.
Yeah.
Which I don't think exists really, but yeah, it's cool.
And that was so that opening scene, the glint of the knife met the glint of his supervisor's eye, and they met, and it's like, that is so, that still gives me chills just thinking about it.
It's also a very good.
Job can relate to that, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's also a very good IDW comics adaptation.
Yeah.
It's very good comic book adaptation. It's a miniseries of how many issues? 6 or something, right?
12, 10? Actually. I think 12, it's like 12.
12, yeah.
And the art is really good. Those are really well done. I hope that they go on, IDW goes on to do Everville.
Oh, that'd be cool, yeah.
They should.
Yeah. I like the fact that there's a talking monkey in the Great and Secret Show, Raoul.
Yeah.
Because my brother's name is Raoul. So I like to joke about that.
Yeah. Has your brother read The Great and Secret Show or Everville?
No, I don't think he has. No.
My brother had a copy of Great and Secret Show, and it was another one of those things where he had to have a book to go to a signing or something. I don't know. He ended up with one. Or no, I gave him my old one because I got the UK first edition with that cool paintings on it. So I gave him the US first edition that has the mailbox on the cover.
Right. The American first edition.
Yeah. Yeah, because the UK has a better cover.
And then from what I've heard, the American edition doesn't come with the symbol of the medallion drawn inside the book.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
And the medallion that belonged to the shoal with the guy swimming, and then there's like the egg and the evolution and stuff like that. Because that's in all of the UK editions, I think, the paperbacks and the hardcovers.
When I bought my dad's house because he retired and moved to Panama. So I bought my dad's house, and Jennifer and I were cleaning out the crawl space, and I found The Great and Secret Show in the crawl space, and it was all moldy and stuff. That makes me mad.
Wow. So it slipped somehow and fell in the crawl space, I guess.
I don't think so. I think my brother put it there because there was some other stuff of his that he didn't want anymore.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So Kimmi Albee says, when I was in high school, Cabal was the very first book I read where the monsters are freaks and freaks were where the monsters and freaks were the good guys, and I identified with it very deeply. I bought hardback copies of both it and the Damnation Game and put them on a shelf in my room, never opened, never read. I made myself a promise that Clive himself would be the one to crack the bindings on them when he opened them to put his autograph in them. Fast forward more than a decade, and 8 household moves later, I had something of a gypsy lifestyle in my early 20s. I had lost or left behind so much, but I still had those 2 books, and I finally got a chance to meet Clive at a class he gave through the Learning Annex in San Francisco. The publicists and folks in charge were telling everyone that you could only get one thing signed, so When it was my turn, I told Clive the story of the 2 books and asked him to choose which one he wanted to sign, because it would be equally meaningful to me. He shushed the person who tried to stop me from handing him both books, and then stood up and made a grand gesture out of very loud cracking the bindings of each book before signing them both for me, saying
wow.
that dedication to a dream like that deserves to be fulfilled. Those books still hold a place of honor in my house to this day, and things Clive said during that class have inspired and informed my creative process ever since. Or every day
See,
since.
That's a beautiful story right there.
Yeah.
Another story that shows how much Clive cares and respects the dedication that his fans have for his work.
And you know what? The publishers or the bookstore owners, those are the people who make those rules about how many books you can bring. Because there have been I've been to so many of these things, and there have been a lot of times where they give you some rule that you're supposed to only bring 2 books or whatever, and it's like, whatever, I bring however many I want and just see what happens when I get up to the front of the line. It just depends on if Clive, will override them.
Right, yeah. I've had several convention stuff that I've been to, not for Clive, but for European comic books and stuff like that. And usually, there's always some public relations next to the artist that's pretty much stating the rules. And sometimes the artists go no, it's okay, I can do it, it's okay.
And they'll be autographs only, no personalization.
Right. There was one...
That was a good thing about the Cabal Cut screening. There were no rules. I mean, there was Nick Vince, Simon Bamford, and Hugh Ross there, as well as Russell Cherrington. And there were literally no rules. Yeah, it was just a case that, come up, do what you got to do, get your first things signed, and have a good time. It were a really, really well thought out process that people went to.
Well, that's awesome. Did a lot of people hang back and get things autographed and stuff?
The queues were immense. I mean,
wow.
The Darlington Forum is only a smallish place, but there were a fair few people packed in there, and I think nearly everyone went for something signed.
Well, that's great.
I'm just a little jealous that Atlanta, Georgia, has had the privilege of having 2 screenings there in the short space of a month or something.
Yeah,
they're gonna have.
I thought about that too when they announced Dragon Con. It's
yeah, it's gonna be the second one that the previous one that was announced is gonna be Atlanta, Georgia, and then the other one announced is gonna be Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm wow. That's cool for them, I guess.
Dragon Con is huge. I mean, I guess there's some controversy about it, but I don't know. I mean, I think if I were, are you guys familiar with this story of Dragon Con and the guy that's a stockholder?
No, but I've heard that there's one guy has charges of minor abuse.
Yeah.
And that he still makes money out of the convention. So some people are boycotting it.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, they've taken away all of his ability to control anything in the convention. But he's still a stockholder, and they can't. People are saying, well, why don't you just stop doing Dragon Con and start up doing something else? Well, he's in litigation with them, and I know that when someone sues you and say you're getting foreclosed on your house, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to sign this house over to my son or my brother or whatever. The court can overturn that and say that it's fraudulent.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think it would be the same kind of thing. I mean, they really can't do something like that just to take away someone's ownership interest. All they can really hope is that he eventually goes to jail, and then when he's in jail, then maybe they have a rule where they can take his.
I would say for people just to see the con as a place to have fun, and and show support for Clive and go to the screening. So basically, that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, and Dragon Con is huge. I mean, it's because it encompasses everything that you can imagine. So, gosh, man, I have so many more stories. I mean, I got a tour of Clive Barker's office. Mark, because I was in California for a real estate convention, and I said, I told Mark Miller I wanted to have lunch with him or meet up with him, and he was so busy. He said, "Why don't you just come down to the office?" I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I thought about it for a little bit. It's like, wait a minute, that's Clive Barker's office in his house. So, so I got to go and hang out in there. I got to look around their waiting room, see all the cool stuff on the walls. Like there's the clapper for for Nightbreed, Lord of Illusions, and Hellraiser. I got to see still paintings, and he's got like Ghana African movie posters and just a lot.
He's been posting some images of those in the Clive Barker official Facebook page, like the Lord of Illusions one, and some Hellraiser ones. That's pretty cool.
And I got to go downstairs where they store all the Aberrat paintings and look at I got to see Christopher Carrion. I got to touch the original Christopher Carrion and the original 3-part Aberrat with all of the islands and the ship. And
that triptych has a name, right? It's The Beautiful Moment.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. The Beautiful Moment. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to mark
something that some people don't know is that the gate in front of his house, like there are some. It's like 3 houses put together, and one of the gates has like a bust of Nyx on one side of the gate, and there's like a Seraphim angel on the other side because it's Seraphim Films.
Yep. Yep. I have a picture of those.
Cool. Yeah.
And actually, it's 2 houses now.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that was awesome. Oh, and they even had the realtor came out in me because they had there was like a tent in Clive's backyard that had a whole bunch of paintings in it, and I'm like, oh my God, get these out of the weather.
Yeah, but I guess he's, for him, he has so many that he doesn't have enough room to put all the paintings there, I guess.
Yeah, and those were ones that were probably not going to be used for anything.
Yeah, he's mentioned sometimes that he can sometimes grab a painting if it's not working, and then he'll just scrape everything off and paint over it and start again. So.
Yeah, so that's why he doesn't just throw them out or, but geez, well, now that they've got the store, they can start selling some of those things.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of Clive doing drawings and selling them in his store.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
So that was all of our feedback, and we have sort of a bonus topic if you want to do that. This is something that one of our listeners came up with in email. It was, what would you like to see in a Hellraiser movie?
Oh boy.
Yeah. So he has 15 things on here, but I guess we could kind of see, kind of go around and see what we all think.
All right, well, let's get started.
For me, I would like to see a different group of Cenobites, not Pinhead. I would like to see the world instead of the character of Pinhead be the center of the movie.
Right. I would like to see more about Leviathan and the Labyrinth.
Yeah. Yeah, that all got left behind after Hellraiser 2.
Yeah. That was unfortunate. I think there was a lot of room there to improve on the mythology. Of course, now we're all waiting for the Scarlet Gospels to come out.
Yeah.
Have either of you 2 guys read Sister Celice? The short story?
Yeah. Yeah, we have.
I guess I'd like to see a film based around that.
That would be cool. I'm sure Barbie Wilde would love to see that too.
I mean, I think that's a good stand-up story on its own, and you could probably make a couple of films out of that.
I've had the privilege of not only reading Sister Celice's story in the Hellbound Hearts book, I've read an unpublished story of Sister Celice by Barbie Wilde, which will be coming out soon in a project that's being developed right now. So I can't really tell anything about the details of this project, but it's pretty cool. It's going to be pretty cool, and the story is also pretty good. So, as usual.
Is that linked to the thing that's on, I think it's the Labyrinth that I saw it on? There's sort of an extra...
No,
Just
it's
something
connected to something different. It belongs. The person developing it is. Have you heard of the followers of the Pandorics?
Yes.
So okay, yeah, it's connected to them.
That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty awesome to see Barbie Wild, developing more stuff about Sister Selyse, and I really can't wait for this stuff to actually get published because it's pretty good.
Well, we can read some of his ideas. So this is Nicholas Ribera, and these were his ideas for Hellraiser movie. He says, I'd like to see a storyline involving a chemist, pharmaceutical researcher who's creating a chemical for a new painkiller, and as he's working on arranging the chemicals and creating this new complex molecule, folding the atoms into place, he accidentally creates the smallest lament configuration.
Oh, baby. Yeah, that would be a crystallographer's nightmare, I guess. Yeah. Like folding the proteins. Have you guys know that thing that was folding at home?
Oh, yeah. That's on you can do that on the PlayStation or on the computer.
Exactly. I guess you could think of a crowdsourced computer that would, open a gate to hell, I guess.
I used to be really big into SETI at home.
Mm-hmm. That's also pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, but it killed one of my computers, and then I got mad, and I never did it again.
Oh, yeah. It was pretty intense.
Yeah.
So shoot me more ideas, more and more.
Okay, I'd like to see a scene where someone is in a cubic room opening the puzzle box, and as they manipulate the box, the same manipulation happens to the room they're in. And actually, we talked about this in the script for Hellraiser 3 that never happened.
Yeah. The script for Hellraiser 3 from Peter Atkins, where Pinhead would run this bordello, and Le Marchand would be this guy sitting naked in a church, manipulating a miniature house version of the bordello. And as he would twist the house around, different sections of the house would change place, and people would be sliced through doorways and stuff like that. Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
He says, I'd like to see a movie where someone goes to hell and they see all of the characters who did the same in the earlier films either being tortured or as new Cenobites. So some kind of continuity. I mean, I think the only continuity we ever get in between these later Hellraiser sequels is some version of Cenobites from previous movies shows up.
Yeah. For a while, I mean, the Chatterer was the one that was in some kind of version of the Chatterer was always in the Hellraiser films. Either it was a Chatter Beast in Hellraiser 4, or the Torso in Hellraiser 5, or the other versions of Chatterer that showed up in 5, 6, 7, 8,
Chatterer Woman in 9.
Right, yeah, exactly.
He says, I'd like to see a buddy cop film, a new character who led a life of torture, maybe for the Iranian Republican Guard or something, dies and gets a job as a Cenobite in the afterlife. He's a rookie and gets paired up with the veteran female Cenobite. I'm thinking something like Training Day, where he shows him the ropes. She shows him the ropes, and from the Cenobite perspective, we learn how the Cenobite world works and why they do what they do. Pinhead plays the hard-ass chief of police. We can see the characters from number 4 show up as other cops and Cenobites.
Darn it, Chatterer, you're a loose cannon. Give me your badge.
Yeah. In this department, we go by the book.
Yeah, by the box.
Yeah.
Anyway, that might be funny.
Oh, my God. You ripped that poor boy's arm off. He had a spare. That was from Action Jackson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He says in number 6, I'd like a return to the theme from the first film where it's a story that works well dramatically and independently of the Hellraiser franchise. Just when we least expect it, Pinhead and company show up and mess up their plans. Yeah. I think they tried to do that with Hellraiser 9, but it was a failure.
Yeah, absolutely.
He says, Cabin in the Woods plus Hellraiser equals awesome. How about a form of orchestration where each Cenobite has their place in the production of capturing someone who opened the box? The Cenobites each have their part to play. One person controls the magical lightning, one controls the music, one conducts the chains like a maestro conductor. The whole thing can be treated as if they're putting on a play. Okay, I didn't like that was the weakest part of that movie for me was just the fact that they had to put on a show for this god or whatever. I don't know that. I mean, the action in Cabin in the Woods was kind of cool, and the revelations of the secret world underground or whatever, but the idea that they had to set it up like a horror movie for this god was a stretch, I think.
The cool thing about that film, of course, is that there was a Cenobite in the film.
Yeah.
And his name was Fornicus, Lord of Bondage and Pain. It's in the credits.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. I like the Cenobite.
Well, and obviously that's where he got this idea from.
Why would you do a Hellraiser film that's based on something else? Because we know that a lot of the sequels were intended as other films anyway, so that's pretty much been done.
I think he's kind of spitballing some ideas too. I'd love a scene of Pinhead getting dressed, edited to music, with other Cenobites folding his flesh into leather like a page helping a knight into his armor.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, the thing about the Hellbound Heart is that Cenobites are described as having clothes that were sewn into their skin. So that would be, that'd be cool.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, if they would ever change their clothes, or I mean, they seem sort of like they're undead, and that they're just always the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Like you never would see Freddy Krueger getting up in the morning and putting on his sweater.
Yeah, or it's always the same ratty sweater.
Yeah. Number 9, a child Cenobite who liked to torture animals when he was alive. That I would not like to see that.
What? I'm sorry, I missed that. I'm sorry.
It says a child Cenobite who liked to torture animals when he was alive.
Oh, that's called a serial killer.
Yeah, I don't. Well, and there's a lot wrong with that because you don't want to see children get killed. You don't want to see children torturing animals.
Right. It'd be just another video nasty.
Yeah. Ugh. Why do they torture humans? Maybe it's a scenario like Monsters, Inc., where their power comes from human suffering, or maybe they're trying to keep the balance of suffering in the human world by removing those who create or crave suffering from the pool.
That's not completely out of purpose, because in the comic books, I think they mention at one point that they needed souls to Leviathan needed souls to keep spinning in his axis or something. It was almost kind of like lube for Leviathan to spin on. I don't know. I remember something about that in the comics. Yeah. I need to reread those things.
Well, and there's a lot of speculation in the comics. I mean, they talk about the war of the flesh and that what was it? Be disciplined so that you might be maybe violent and original in your work. I think was from the Nightbreed and Hellraiser crossover comic.
Right. I like a lot of the lines in that comic. The Jihad.
Yeah, those are good.
One where Pinhead is he's been in kind of a scuffle, and he's putting pins back in his head, and one of the breed asks him, "Doesn't that hurt?" And then he says something like, "Short is the pain, long is the
ornamentation." Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And
so, any other special ones there? Suggestions?
I'd like to see the dynamic of the others in Lost paralleled with the Cenobites. Pinhead would would be the Ben. He's talking about the show Lost.
Oh,
Pinhead
I have
would
never
be the
seen
Ben
it.
character, in that he's the only one from the group that is allowed to talk to Jacob, the engineer, while the other Cenobites have slight jealousy towards his favored position. I don't like that.
I don't know. I've never seen Lost.
I've seen it all the way through. I mean, I thought it was a good show, but I don't really like crossovers with Hellraiser.
Yeah, except for Nightbreed.
He says maybe a reference to Freddy Krueger being a Cenobite that plays by his own rules.
No. I do remember that when they were developing Freddy versus Jason, one of the earliest draft ideas they were throwing around was at the end, they would be fighting in the burning pier near the lake, and they would be like, they would fall into the lake, and there would be like this big whirlpool of light, and they would get drawn into that, and all of a sudden in the darkness, they would wake up like back in hell, and they would get up and get ready to fight each other, and just as Jason would advance with his machete and Freddy Krueger would advance with his gloves, these chains would come out of somewhere, and then they would get stuck, and Pinhead would walk in and say, "Gentlemen, what seems to be the problem?" So that was, but then they couldn't do it because I think it was Mustafa Akkad, the producer. They never really got, the logistics necessary to incorporate the character of Pinhead into that film, because it would take a lot of business, a lot of rights discussions about that, so they canned it. But that was one of the treatments for the Freddy vs. Jason ending.
Yeah, that I would not appreciate that.
Yeah, I know. There was also ideas for pairing up Michael Myers with Pinhead, but I don't really see the point of that.
No. They don't have anything to do with each other.
I know, but sometimes people just want to make money. So.
Well, and Michael Myers is weird, right? Because it's like he's so crazy that it makes him supernatural.
Well, have you ever seen like the whole 8 films of the franchise?
No, I've only seen.
You've never heard about the Thorn curse and the whole thing about Sam Hain and. No. Because they're supposed to be this cult that protects Michael, and Michael is like a mystical thing, and he has the mark of Thorn, and it's like ritual sacrifice. It would take too long to get into that now.
Is that stuff that John Carpenter came up with, or just some other person?
No, that's stuff from like Halloween 6 and 7 and stuff like that.
Well, in the first 2 movies, it really seems like he's just so crazy that he can't die.
Yeah, well, it gets kind of supernatural after a while.
I love that line in From Dusk Till Dawn where he says, "Crazy people do not explode when sunlight hits them. I don't care how crazy they are."
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fun film.
Yeah.
Any other special ideas that he throws in?
Yeah. 13, he says, a reference to how many lament configurations there have been over the years. An archaeologist is exploring a new tomb recently discovered in Egypt or Peru, and they come across a device that they can't explain. This becomes the oldest lament configuration. Maybe it would be a different configuration then.
Actually, when you think about it, stories that were never filmed from Clive Barker, there was a plan to make... the pyramids of Egypt feature like the oldest lament configuration, I think.
Yeah. That was both Hellraiser 3 and The Mummy.
Right. That was both present in an unfilmed version, a treatment version for Hellraiser 3 and The Mummy. And also in the concepts and guidelines for Hellraiser comic series document created in 1989 for the Hellraiser comic books published by Marvel, you can read there that I think that it was supposed to have been like Leviathan created 10,000 lament configuration boxes and scattered them across the universe. So that was something that was made up with feedback from Clive Barker himself. So take it as you will.
Yeah. He says, a scenario in which each configuration has a supernatural tether to a single cell of Cenobites. For example, Pinhead and Company have the lament configuration. This could go with a storyline in which the female Cenobite or another classic one gets promoted to lead her own cell and must find a way to magically suggest someone create their own configuration for her to become tethered to, and maybe the chemist in his number 1 suggestion.
Well, the comic
that's Celise, isn't it? That's what she does that's basically what happens in Sister Celise, isn't it? She finds a puzzle box and uses it.
Right.
And she makes one. Spoilers, by the way, sorry. But yeah, she makes a puzzle box and lures in people for herself and sneaks away from Pinhead in that story. So yeah, that's the basis to that one, I think.
And there's also the comics that I just mentioned from 1991. That's pretty much how it went down. I mean, there were different kinds of Cenobites, different boxes. There was almost like a different box every story, at least, where they would open a box and there would be some different Cenobites coming out. So, and even when you read that the Cenobites that we see in Hellraiser belong to the Order of the Gash, it implies that there are other orders. So, that was always like they're not just the only ones, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And
in the comic books, there are a bunch of them, actually.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I we added this thing on here, but I really, we've kind of talked Hellraiser to death.
Yeah, we did. We did. Well, the other day I just did that funny thing where I came up with bad Books of Blood movie adaptation.
Yeah.
I just came up. I'm just going to mention one of them because it seemed to be very successful, I would say.
Yeah.
Was when I did that. Let me just see if I can find it here. It was bad Books of Blood adaptation number 1, In the Hills, the Cities, and the story that I came up with would be, hang on, where is it? I'm trying to find it on Facebook because that's where I published it. Basically, it would be in the future, Keith Lemon and Scarlett Johansson come across a post-apocalyptic Manchester where there's like 2 giant robots controlled by supporters of Manchester United, and Manchester City would be fighting it off. Manchester United walked and Manchester United sang. Coming soon, never walk alone. So that was like, I know, it was bad. It was. Anyway, so that was it. And those were favorite memories of Clive Barker over the years. We all have them.
Yeah.
Please post a comment, and if you have anything you want to share with us, post a comment on this episode.
Yeah. We'd like to hear your favorite memories. We can tag them on to the end of our next episode if they're not too, if we don't have too many of them. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add?
Nope. Apart from thanks to Clive Barker for everything he does, and hope for many more in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul just said it pretty much. Thanks, Clive, for all the good moments you've given us ever since we picked up a book or saw a film.
You can reach us on the web at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave us a review on iTunes. We have a Facebook page, or you can join the Occupy Midian group. On Twitter, we're at BarkerCast or at Occupy Midian. The forum is www.clivebarkerfans.com/forum. And the theme song was by Colin Lakativa.